Hi everyone and welcome to the webinar. So today I'll be talking about designing durable steel structures based on standard New Zealand technical specification 3404. My name is Raed Sarraf. I work for WSP. I'm technical principal of material and corrosion. And for those of you who don't know me, I used to work for ERA back in the day, quite a while ago now. So I came from a structural engineering background, and then over the years I found that I actually enjoy watching things rust away and paint dry. So here I am in this field. So today we're really going to talk about this interesting thing about how to make durable steel structures. Okay. And a bit of background, we're going to have a background of the standard New Zealand technical specification 3404, a quick talk about the building code to refresh your memory, and not that you need to do that, current issues with the building code, the review currently undergoing with 3404, what we'll go through, acceptable solution, conclusion, and the real take from this webinar is I want to hear your issues. What do you want to see? What you're going through, so that we can capture those and then include them in the update that we're going to be doing on that document. So background to TS3404. So back in 1997, we had the steel structure standard, the SNZ 3404, which had Appendix C, corrosion protection. And then in 2009, we developed the first part 1 of supposed to be 9 parts, which included a section on corrosion protection. However, that was just issued just after the start of the global financial crisis. And what was supposed to be 9 new parts to replace the old 97 version of the steel structure standard never happened. So for a while, some of you remember we had this funny situation where we had 2 SNZ 3404s. And in 2016, ASNZ 5131 was published, which superseded parts of the part 1 of 3404 2009, covered steelwork fabrication and erection. It was cited in the building code in July 2018. And then we published the new SNZ TS3404 2018, which provided an update to section 5, the corrosion protection of the old part 1, and then part 1 was fully withdrawn, so that's now gone, and basically superseded by 5131 and TS3404, and everything now has been cited in the building code, and pretty much by the end of 2018. So there's a section now in the building code, section 3.6 on steel, that basically tells that TS3404 is an acceptable solution for meeting the durability requirements of steel building elements within its scope. And this document set out the technical requirements that are necessary to provide required level of durability to steel structures and their component parts in the New Zealand environments. It satisfied the requirement of the building code, clause B2, as well as the NZTA bridge manual. And just a quick refresher for you on the NZ building code, it does require materials to have a sufficient durability in their environment to meet their functional requirements, which, as you know, we have access to replace it with Deck 30 years, so that material needs to provide 50 years of service with pretty much no maintenance. 15 years if it's moderately difficult to replace and fairly easily detected during maintenance. So that's another way of, so if you can get to it with some difficulty, but you can basically get to it and see it and repair it, then you can justify the use of 15 years. And 5 years is easy to replace and fairly easily detected during normal use. So these are the 3 periods that we usually work for. And I appreciate we're probably going to talk about the 50 years in a bit, which is probably what most of them struggle with and is challenging. So it includes acceptable solutions and methods for verification of durability, which is relatively clear for concrete and timber, but for steel, not so much. So issues with the NZ building code. Now, when I was putting this presentation together, I noticed that I first started talking about this back in 2014. And over that period, I've written a letter to the editor, published in CSOC, and after the publication of TS 3404, I wrote a white paper of some of those issues. So it has been something that we have been discussing about for quite a while, and we're kind of working our way slowly through and addressing these problems. But the main one back in 2014 was there was no reference to the relevant structural steel, other metals, and protective coatings related to durability standards within B2. This is now sorted, so we can remove that part because we do have reference to TS 3404, and we should also cover protective coatings. You can argue we still have an issue with other metals, but that's a battle for another day. At the time, we said there are no acceptable solutions for steel structures, the use of protective coatings, and or recommended detailing. So we now do have guidance on the use of protective coatings, but there's still a little bit of issues about acceptable solutions for steel structures, mainly detailing, which I'll cover a bit more in a bit. And at the moment, which I think is still an issue, verification method B2 VM1 can be used. However, this is open to interpretation, and there's no guidance on how to become qualified to undertake steelwork or metal durability design. So TS 3404, the review. So what's going on now? Like all standard and technical documents, from time to time we need to review them. And unfortunately, at this point in time, Standard New Zealand decided not to be part of this review. So talking to the industry with financial support from Steel Construction New Zealand. So if you're not a member, become a member. It's a great reason. This is where your membership money will go to keep you supported. In addition to in-kind contribution from Engineering NZ and Brand, we are currently undertaking a review of this document, which will be published as an Engineering NZ technical advisory note endorsed by the different organizations. We're aiming to have this done and dusted, ready to go by the end of November this year. And that will include a CSOC webinar, Designing of Materials 2B2. This will not just cover steel, but this will be steel, timber, and concrete to be done around probably that time of the year, around November. And this is the aim. This will be myself with Stuart of ProConsult, and he's also the CSOC editor. We'll be together. We'll do this webinar. It's a webinar at the moment just because of the situation with COVID. But of course, if at that point in time things are still okay, we may even come to you in person. So that's just to give you a heads up of what's coming. So what are the reviews that's currently going to go on for TS 3404? So I understand we're going to be reviewing the surface-specific atmospheric corrosivity, especially for external sheltered surfaces, and reintroducing internal wet and reviewing the current guidance on internal damp. This was based on the feedback I've been receiving for a while now, so we're going to be reviewing those. We're going to review selected coating lists that we currently have for different corrosivity categories. We are looking at adding a 50-year coating system where applicable, because I appreciate at the moment we have the 5 and 15 covered. We have 40 years, which is really to comply with NZTA requirements, but I appreciate there's been a demand for 50 years, so we're going to cover that as well. We're going to clarify guidance on achieving 50 years in internal environments. Again, this is really relevant for buildings, so we're going to look at that as well. And we're going to review the guidance related to corrosion of steel in non-atmospheric environments, mainly various steelwork and steelwork in water. So just to give you a taste of some of the new things. So in addition to actually reviewing the document itself, some parts will be modified, changed, corrected, clarified, whatever. We are looking at adding a whole new section at the end of an appendix to consider acceptable solutions. So at the moment we have, for example, we talk about galvanic corrosion. We simply say, oh, look at these two standards and away you go. And what are we talking about? Let's say, for example, is where you have a copper pipe which is connected by a galvanized bolt, or in some places even I've seen the other day a zinc plated bolt, which is not a very good idea. Or where you have different similar metals, mainly between weathering steel and galvanizing. we're going to provide guidance on what to do in this situation. And it's really simple. Just separate them. This is actually from a brand document called Designing for Maintenance. And it's just give you a bit of guidance about when you have the similar metals, you separate them with a very good detail. You can use a top hat washer. But there are also the ability of welding stainless steel, for example, 2-mile steel. And there's an Appendix H of the existing welding standards 1554 by 6, which is already there. So we will clarify those requirements of different metals. If the guidance is already available, we will just reference the other standard or document. But where needed, we're going to bring those details into this one document so that you have it all in one place. But the gist of the matter, when you have the similar metals, it's always good to separate them. And it's just, since we have a little bit of time, really when it's really is a problem when not just that you have two dissimilar metals, but also they do need an electrolyte, especially seawater or something that will cause the galvanic corrosion from occurring. So if you do have a situation where you have dissimilar metals inside a dry environment within a building, it's actually okay. You don't need to do much, but it's always good practice to separate. And those are what we're looking at adding into this document to provide you the guidance and support you need for these types of situations. Another one is designing from detailing for durability. We just currently reference a number of standards, but we appreciate a document like HERA report R4133, but we appreciate it probably is a good idea to actually include some of those guidance in this document so you have it all in one place. So a common one that we always see are what we call rusty bottoms, base plates which are rusting from underneath. The one on your left is a guardrail, which was relatively, at the time when we saw this, it was only 2 years old, and it's in an environment that's very benign inside the country, quite way beyond 50 kilometers from the sea, and within 2 years there was quite a bit of rust, while the other one was more of a typical marine environment situation. So unless you can figure out how to design a base plate which is up in the air, and you can figure out how you can transfer the load like that, but even then, as you can see, you'll still have a problem with the rusty bottom. And that's what it looks like when you take it off. It's basically, it's rusting from beneath, and if you don't take care of it, it will start, you have to have section loss, and then you have structural issues with it. And before I talk about the solution to that, I'll give you another example where you have ground planted steel, whether it's galvanized light poles or weathering steel architectural features like the one at the top. Those are when you have a rusty bottom as well. And in these situations, what the solution actually is already given in HERA report R4133, section 12.13, where you add an additional layer of a non-conductive coating. So I guess what I'm saying is some of these details are actually already out. And it's just people need to be aware of where they are, but we're just thinking we'll put them all in one place for you to make it easier. There are other relatively simple details about just, drainage, keeping ability for air to move through the section, getting rid of the possibility of water ponding, because you don't have a situation where water just ponds, sits there in that joint and then start corroding. In this particular case, as you can see, it's you to see, and there was a little drain hole, pretty small 5mm hole that just got plugged and the water started filling up. So those type of details you need to be aware of. Once you've included for them, then you're not just designing for durability from a protective coating, giving you the longevity, but also detailing is very important, which we need to allow for and include. Signing off PS3, PS4. So last month we had Adam Thornton who talked about the new INDU letter for durability, the signing off producer statements. I won't cover PS1 and 2 because that was covered quite well with Adam. I'm just going to explore a little bit on PS3 and 4. So PS3 is the one related to the completion of the building work. And basically what I'm suggesting is what you need the coating applicator to work within an effective QA/QC system using trained, experienced personnel and well-maintained facilities and equipment. Depending on the structure complexity and site corrosivity, the painting applicator should be accredited under Australian PCCP scheme, the Painting Contractor Certification Program, which we currently have 5 in the country. And approved coatings to be APAS NEP codes for Norfolk shall be critical structures in severe environments, C3 medium and above. But pretty much most of the reputable coating suppliers already have these automatically. So what we're saying here is, if someone, you're on a job, you're going to be issuing a PS4, but you need to see a PS3. These are the type of things you need to keep an eye out for. So depending on the complexity of the job, and 5131 is really good now at telling you what level of QA traceability and so forth you need to do, depending on the structure, the surface qualification, and based on the construction category of that structure. I'm just basically pointing out that this is the type of information you need to see and cite when you receive a PS3 to give you confidence that the work has been done in accordance to the specification. So from there, you're going to be issuing a PS4, which is based on the construction monitoring of the building work. And really what you need to do is engage an independent coating, a certified coating inspector, whether it's an ACE or a CBIT. They will be your eyes and ears on the job. Now, the biggest thing I would recommend is do not put in your project specifications and the documents, whatever, that the contractor employed that person. That person should either be directly employed by the client as an owner or as their agents, like you, for example. Because you want them to represent you on site and making sure that they're your eyes and ears on site. So once you receive such a document from them, that the report says, yes, everything has been applied according to the specification, then you, the chartered design engineer, or, and this is part of my white paper where I talked about a chartered durability practitioner, which we don't exist yet, but one day hopefully you will. But you're the chartered design engineer. Once you see the paper, then you with confidence issue a PS4. Or in this case, the in lieu letter. So this is what you need just to ask for. So again, this, like I said, it's a relatively short presentation, and really what I'm after is your feedback. I need that feedback from you so I can understand what are the issues, what do you want to see in this document to help you from later in the year comply with the B2 design. So we basically SNZ TS 3404 does provide technical guidance, an acceptable solution to meet the NZ building code. We are reviewing it, and we're looking at issuing an engineering and the technical advisor note later in the year. I need your feedback. Please give it to me. Any questions?
Great, thank you for that. What we'll do is we'll just see if any questions come through. I know it does take a minute or two for people to have an idea on what to say, so we'll just hover through a little bit. There we go. Will there be any guidance on external bulk applications?
External bolts.
Yeah.
Okay, so yep, that's something we have been looking at the moment. So in certain situations, a galvanized bolts, okay, the galvanized bolts typically have 50 microns of zinc on them. So if you get it from a super place, we're talking hot dip galvanized bolts, not zinc plated. We never talk about zinc plated, so they're normal 8.8s. And depending on the environment, you probably will have, depending what you put on your steelwork, what you want to do, the bolt needs to have a similar life as your steelwork. So in a certain situation, in certain environments, probably in a C3 environment, you may get away with a galvanized bolt should be sufficient to reach your 40, 50-year life that you're after, let's say 50, for example. But when you reach the near the sea, within 500 meters from the sea, a C5 marine or whatever, then you may have a need to apply an additional coating system or additional corrosion protection system. Those are the current thinking. So yes, we will provide some guidance of when a galvanized bolt is okay by itself, or when you need to put something on top of it to provide protection. But however, be aware, if you have an aesthetic requirement, a lovely, beautiful painted steelwork, a really structural feature, you probably will end up painting that bolt anyway to make it look the same as the rest of the structure. That will provide the protection as well. Having said that, we will provide guidance on the situation and what you need to do and what the expectations of that protection provides as a full system.
Thanks, Raed. This is Martin. So the next question is, will you provide guidance on durability for steel less than 8mm thickness?
Yeah, I guess we can have a look at it. I remember that question came to me before. But yep, I guess we can look at it. So I guess we're also talking about purlins, thin gauge. We'll have a look at it. That's a tricky one a little bit.
Great. And I suppose in a similar vein, what about durability guidance for metal decking?
Metal decking, we currently have some of that guidance already in R4133. Yeah, have a look at that first. But again, if that needs to be expanded upon or included in the TS3404, let me know. I mean, look, my email is there. Just contact me directly. But double check what's currently in R4133. If that's not sufficient, let me know what is the issue, and I'll get back to you. But at the moment, I do believe we do have guidance on how it would perform by itself and how in an external environment, especially at the time, I think we've written it for car parks. So it could be applicable if you have it under a deck. And there are situations where you need to add an additional layer of paint, for example, to give you the longevity.
Right. And from memory, this is actually already covered in 3404, but will you be covering corrosion rates as an alternative to coatings for in-ground applications like bare steel for sheet piles or tie bars / soil nailing?
That's already there in the non-atmospheric zone. I mean, yeah, check that out. We do have it actually for different types of soils, pHs, in addition to sheet piles and water as well. But we are going to review that just to make sure it's current, it's up as per the current guidance as well. But it's there. But we'll review.
And do you have guidance on when elements are considered damp in external walls? This is a question that I was talking about with someone the other day, actually. So if elements are behind the building paper or RAB line, would this be internal C1 or would it still be damp?
Okay, so that's again, R4133 covers that, and this is about if the steel on the warm side or the cold side of the dew point. Basically, we take it, if the steel is behind your building paper and insulation, it is deemed to be on the warm side, and therefore condensation is not supposed to occur. The only way you get a if you have a leak, but that's a whole leaky building, and that's a whole other issue. But assuming everything is built correctly and you have it behind the insulation and building paper, it is deemed to be a C1. And in practice, you could, in theory, have unpainted steel. There are situations where you put a primer just to keep it looking pretty and not have any rust, which is also already covered in TS3404 of a primer and how long you can keep it before you close the building up. But if you are on the cold side of the dew point, the steel is, let's say, directly behind the cladding, and it's not covered by insulation or anything, then as a minimum that should be taken as C3, as currently said in R4133, and I think in 3404 as well. And that's when you start needing to look at putting a corrosion protection system on. Now, I appreciate that has come up with me a few times as well, and probably we will clarify that a little bit better.
Thank you. Someone has said, you mentioned an external base plate. Is there a benefit in not grouting the gap below the base plate?
The different details I've seen in the past, I've seen some people who actually have a base plate and then they had a nut underneath it. So you have your hold down bolt. You put your nuts, so we usually put them to locate the base plate, and then you put the base plate and you tighten it up, and then we grout everything. So that's the typical way. All we're saying now is, just paint that underside and the whole underside and the sides. In that particular case, with the base plate on that railing, what happened there is they used a dry pack mortar which was not compacted correctly, and because it was a railing. It had slotted holes, and so water got in, and because they didn't dry pack it correctly, there was actually cavities, and water just sat there, and that created basically a crevice corrosion environment, and it was really, really corrosive, even though we were so far away from the sea. The solution for that was basically, I'm now not a fan of dry pack after what I've seen, basically wet pack it up and have it flow and fill that whole cavity. But putting that paint additional is also an additional layer of insurance and protection. But also, if you have a relatively large socket hole or whatever, you may want to consider packing it up, whether with the same grout, have it level, or with a Sikaflex or whatever sealant type of situation. But even if you do have a gap and you have a nut there, again, there's still a risk of water getting in, because you may have dirt or. And when you do have a dry patch, sorry, one other thing. And when you do have that concrete or grout, whatever, always have it sloped as well, so that water sheds away.
Yep. Now the next question, I'm wondering if there's a bit more to it, but they're saying, would there be a guidance on expected/acceptable material loss in order to assess the reduced strength of the structure over its design life? I would have thought with this one that you take into account the corrosion rates and then ensure that your capacity still exceeded demand.
Yeah, we already have that in the TS 3404, where there's an equation section, clause 2.5, which is assessing the remaining steel loss at the end of the design life. And you have it's a function of the coating will give you X number of years, and then you calculate how much that is and what's your design life, and you then have the corrosion rates, and that will give you how much steel loss you've lost over that period once the coating has failed, for example. And then you check with your structural design based on your corrosion allowance. That is currently also given there. But again, if you think that is not clear or you need a better example or whatever, just let us know.
Thank you. So should we be avoiding the use of stainless bolts in external sea spray zones for connecting galvanized steel members?
No, on the contrary, it's actually the right situation. You have a small cathode, which is the stainless, to a very large anode. That's the right combination. It's just the other way around that you don't want to have. But even then, I would still suggest put a separation, whether it's a top hat washer. Look, I once had a job, and it was actually in immersion, and we had stainless and painted steel and whatever. And the guy, instead of buying some fancy top hat washers, he just went to Bunnings and got some plumbing pipes, and to provide a separation inside the hole. So stainless bolts to galvanized handrails is the right combination. It's the other way around that's the problem. But it's always good practice to separate.
The next question is they're saying, would this TS be relevant to applications in Australia too? I'm assuming that they mean the practice note that you're putting together, as opposed to the temporary standard.
So technically speaking, I would say yes, because we both of us follow the same, SNZ 2312. We both have a corrosion and coating guide. We have very similar requirements from a corrosion protection point. The only difference is we have a different corrosion map than them. So as long as they use their corrosion maps and we have ours, everything else is relatively similar, because both of our standards, the corrosion protection of steel, are applicable for both countries.
Thank you. And will you provide guidance on stainless steels in marine environments? Also, is there any reaction between different grades of stainless steel, e.g. 316 interface with 304?
I wouldn't be too fussed about 316 and 304. They're relatively similar austenitics. But then you do have a situation, if I remember my galvanic corrosion table correctly, is when one of them is a passive, one of them is a reactive. So they may have a situation there between them. But yeah, stainless is, and especially if you go to a super duplexes and you have an austenitic, but it's a really interesting question. I'm wondering what the situation is. But in theory, if you have two similars, there shouldn't be much of an issue unless one of them turns reactive for some reason. As for guidance on stainless, that's a whole other field. I mean, we're barely trying to deal with structural steel, but I would have thought there is guidance on stainless steel. There's an AS&Z standard, I can't remember at the moment, that does provide some guidance. And we also got the New Zealand Stainless Steel Development Association. Just check with them as well.
Magic. The next question about substandard steel coming into New Zealand is outside the scope of this, and the one about the 8mm steel has already been covered.
Yeah.
So,
the only thing I would say about substandard steel is go to Steel Construction New Zealand website. They do have guidance and compliance documents and have to demonstrate compliance and guidance on what that. So go to them first.
Yep. And what about indirectly exposed steel, e.g. above soffit linings which are not insulated/sealed?
Yep, that's a situation I've been told about a few times, and we will be looking into that. So that's something on my mind. That's actually what started all this, that particular situation. But yeah, I would probably be going into looking at the environment where it is and relative to the sea, because the further away from the sea you are, the risks are reduced. So there's a function of that, but there's also the need for a more robust protection system could be applied. So we'll look at that.
Great, and that is the end of our questions. That's what we've come to.
Okay.
So if we just give it a few more seconds and see if any more pop through. But it doesn't look like anybody's typing. So look, from there, I'd like to say thank you very much, Raed. We certainly appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to that practice note coming out.
Yes, thank you. And my email is there. Just email me, please. All good.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you.
send out a link to everybody with the slides, and your email address will be on there so that they can get in touch with you directly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.